What's up, guys? My name is Hutch. My name is Hutch. I just repeated myself. And I make Call of Duty videos and I put them on the internet. First of all, I'm going to show you guys my classes because a lot of people were asking to see them. And then right after that, I'm going to show you guys my stats. And then right after that, I'm going to show you guys 2 back-to-back Nuketown free-for-alls. Which I fucking hate free-for-alls on Nuketown. Not because I hate the map. I don't think it's a bad map, but it just seems like whenever the map pops up in the rotation, everybody has to vote it. And so, thank God they took it out of the rotation so much, because before it was like half the matches I was playing was Nuketown. So if you guys are going to be playing free-for-alls on Nuketown, I figured I'd let you in on my little secret. It's not that big of a secret. I feel like anybody who played that map long enough would be able to figure it out, but it's basically this one spot where you can mine 4 different spawns with an unhampered line of sight and rack up big kill streaks and end the game within 4 minutes. And so that's what I'll show you guys. But today I want to talk about a topic that's pretty relevant lately. I want to talk about racism. I want to talk about my experience with I want to talk about, man, this is such a... So I want to talk about my background when it comes to things like diversity, first of all, before we can touch on racism. Okay, so I was raised in a very, very white suburban neighborhood. It's about an hour north of San Francisco in a town called Petaluma. Of course, if you went there now, and those of you that live in Sonoma County now, you'll see it seems like it's probably at this point half Latino and half white, Anglo-Caucasian, and of course there's other people thrown in there. You have Asians, and you have a black community there too, but the 2 predominant colors of skin that you'll see in Petaluma is brown and white. Back then when I was growing up, it was basically all white. But my family unit was pretty interesting. So I'm the baby boy. I have 4 older sisters, and my older sister's black, which is a long story that I'm not going to get into. It's from my father's previous marriage, but it's a little complicated. I'm not going to get into it. Anyways, so my oldest sister's black, and when you're a kid, especially when you're in your developmental stages, infancy to adolescence and things like that, and you're raised in a household where you have 4 sisters and one of them's black, you don't think of her as your black sister. She's just your sister. You're too young to even question that in your brain, basically. But when the kids at my school found out about that, a lot of them liked to give me shit for it and basically ridicule me for it, which is something that I didn't understand, because to me it was normal. My family wasn't any different from theirs, basically. So I had a hard time in my brain comprehending where they were coming from when they would try and take a jab at me for having a sister who had dark skin. And ultimately, you know what? I was actually ridiculed just in general. They were looking for things anything to make fun of me for. But basically, when you're as tall as I am and as skinny as I am, and I have been like that my entire life, it's basically a huge bullseye on you when you're in a tiny Catholic private school, when your class is no bigger than 35 people. And, I just generally looked physically different than everybody else. There were a couple other skinny people in my class, but none of them were as tall as I was. But that experience of being treated like an outsider for, basically my entire grade school experience, actually helped me later on in life to identify with people that had the same kind of struggle. So a struggle like racism, while I didn't identify in the exact same way, obviously, when you're white, you can't identify with someone who's experienced racism on the level of someone who's Latino or black or something like that. It did give me a pretty unique perspective that allowed me to empathize in my own little way. So if we fast forward a little bit to when I was 15 and my first job, I worked at a drive-thru at Burger King. And there was 30 employees that worked at that particular location, and I was one of 3 white people. At the time, I was taking Spanish in high school, and I wasn't particularly interested or motivated to do that well in that class, but when I started working there, I became completely fascinated with the language And I was also agitated that I was standing right next to people and I couldn't carry on a conversation with them. So for the next year, I would ask them to teach me the language. So everybody there would chip in, and I would ask them to correct me if I said something in an incorrect way, and they did so. And they all learned to like me quite a bit. I was like that lovable gringo. And by the end of the year, I was able to speak Spanish pretty comfortably. Not perfectly, but very comfortably. I could carry on a conversation decently, at the very least. And that trend actually continued on basically at every job that I had ever had. So I worked at a Boys and Girls Club for 3 years. There were a lot of Latino kids there, and so I chose to speak a lot of Spanish with them because it was my way of practicing, and I didn't want to lose the language. And then I worked at restaurants for 6.5 years. Anybody who's worked at a restaurant knows it, especially one in California. I don't know about other states, but in California you'll find a lot of Latino immigrants, either from Central America, places like Guatemala, Chile, Nicaragua, El Salvador, or Mexico, or other places in the world. But I mean, that's basically the huge demographic when it comes to Latino immigrants in California. There's a lot of them that work either as cooks or in the kitchen or as busboys, things like that. Of course, there are some that wait tables too, but and I'm not saying that that's right, that the way that it's divided like that, but that's how it is in California. And for 6.5 years, I practiced Spanish at every restaurant that I ever worked at. I worked at about maybe 5. And I was able to learn the language pretty well, and I'm actually really proud to say that I speak it almost fluently. I would say I'm about 80 to 90% fluent when it comes to Spanish. My accent's not bad either. I don't really sound like a gringo when I speak it, and I think that's pretty cool. So, with regards to racism, and my background with diversity, when I see it on YouTube, I find it laughable. In my mind, it's almost not even worth dignifying with response. In fact, it really is not worth dignifying with response, because YouTube is such an anonymous forum that anybody can act like a total fucking asshole and not experience any kind of consequences whatsoever. And so if I post a video on my channel and I'm seeing a lot of N-bombs being dropped on it, all I can do is kind of sigh and shake my head a little bit, and wish that maybe one day people chose not to use language like that. But unfortunately, they do. I could make a video about toasters, and someone would find a way to drop the N-bomb somewhere in the comments. When you have a channel with nearly 320,000 subscribers, as it stands right now, with that much dialogue happening in the videos, it's basically, it's not basically, it's impossible to police. I would literally have to quit my job and basically not sleep and monitor my comments 24 hours a day to make sure that people weren't issuing racial slurs. Let me tell you guys another story. When I moved down to LA, I got a job at Machinima in February, and I moved down to LA, and I ended up moving to this pretty ghetto spot in LA. It's a very, very Latino neighborhood. There's a couple white people, a couple black people, a couple Asians, and everyone else is Latino. And the first week I was there, I was seeing a girl at the time, and I asked her to come over. It was really late. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I told her when she parked her car, don't walk up to my doorstep, let me walk you to the door. And so she did that. I walked out to her car. As we were walking back to our apartment, a gangbanger basically cut us off and wouldn't let us pass into my apartment because he wanted to tell me something. And what he wanted to tell me was that white people weren't welcome on the street, that I was a guest and he was a resident, and that if I stayed longer than a few months, I'd probably get hurt. Now, I was terrified in that moment, not because of what I thought he was going to do to me. I was terrified of what he was going to do to this girl that I was with, if he was going to do anything. It was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my entire life, but I kept my composure. I kept eye contact with him the entire time. I didn't look down. I didn't look ashamed. I just nodded my head and calmly told him, I said, yeah, I get you, man. I didn't really know that before I moved into the neighborhood, but we just want to go watch a movie. I mind my own business, so don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. And he was actually really polite about threatening my life, which is pretty ironic. the point of me telling you guys that story is that he had no way of knowing that my family has a lot of diversity. That my sister's actually, one of my sisters is married to a full-blood Mexican. My two nieces are half Mexican. My nephew's full-blood Mexican. Or that I speak the language, or that I had worked with Latino immigrants basically my entire adult life, and that I had a profound respect for the work ethic that I see in that community. He had no way of knowing that because he didn't get to know me. If he would have got to know me, I'll bet you he would have liked me. And that's basically the case whenever you feel any sense of hostility or fear or prejudice against any segment of people, whether that be gays or blacks, Mexicans, anything. The more you get to know someone, the less whatever differences exist between you and them affect you. And my hope is that people that are watching this video right now that choose to use that sort of language when it comes to comment section in my video, my hope is that one day you actually get to know, whether that be forced like a coworker situation or whether it's voluntary. My hope is that you all get to know whatever it is that you're afraid of in other people. And you can experience the sort of freedom that I've experienced, which is that I don't think of people in different terms anymore. And I'm very happy about that within myself. It's a good quality to have, and I like that about me. Anyways, to everybody else, thank you for being tolerant, loving, kind individuals. And I'm sorry the video dragged on too long. One more thing, Woody's Gamertag actually did a video breaking down some sniping gameplay. The little sample that you saw at the end was part of the gameplay. But he posted that on his channel, and I'm going to put the link to that video in the description if you guys want to check it out. He basically breaks down my gameplay, what I did right and what I did wrong. And it was a really cool video. So anyways, I'll talk to you guys later.